Masses will be interested in Bitcoin when it's at 200, 300, 500K. And that's very normal, right? If you look at how ordinary people think, it's just like I see someone panicking and then I panic. There's very little foresight and planning ahead and doing research because everyone's busy with bread and circuses, right? And that's just how human civilization has evolved. And I think we're still in that very small minority, which we did the research and we went down the rabbit hole and we're listening to the Bitcoin podcast with Walker and everything like that. And yeah, you're very early if you're listening to this. And people seem to think they're not early because Bitcoin is at 80K, or it went up to 108, but I still think we're very early.
You've heard the whispers, the speculation. The bold forecasts Bitcoin isn't just the currency of the future. It is the future. Yet here you are, hesitating, watching from the sidelines as if frozen in place. But let me tell you this, if you don't take action before Bitcoin soars past $500,000, you'll be looking back with regret, wondering why you didn't seize the opportunity when you had the chance. Samson Mow puts it bluntly, most people react too slowly. They hesitate, treating Bitcoin like a stock that needs validation, but that's where they go wrong. We're still in the early phases, long before the major explosion. When Bitcoin hits $200,000, $300,000, or even $500,000, the masses will rush in. But by then, it will be too late. They'll be chasing the trend while the real visionaries will have already secured their positions. History keeps repeating itself. Think about the internet boom, the dot-com era. The early adopters built wealth while the skeptics hesitated. Bitcoin is following the same pattern. So, what's your move? Will you stay on the sidelines, or will you act before this opportunity slips away? The future is already here, and it's waiting for you. Now, let's dive into some key moments from Samson Mow's latest interview to understand where Bitcoin is headed. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more deep insights. Let's get started.
But in terms of the price behavior right now, I would say it's just a fear of uncertainty. It's not necessarily about Bitcoin. We are correlated sometimes with the traditional markets, and it can be frustrating, but we always break from it. You know, we correlate for a while and then we break. That's why we're at 80,000 today and not at whatever the S&P is at, right? We do go up against everything. But right now there's a lot of fear about tariffs, one. Two is just what is going to happen next, because the Trump administration, they're moving very quickly and they're just seemingly, trying to fix things in a very rough manner, right? And then there is three, the effort to lower interest rates on 10-year T-bills, and that's really just trashing the stock market, right? To make people invest in bonds. So there's just so much at play in terms of the macroeconomic, securities landscape alone, that I think that's bringing us down with it. And you compound that by the fact that people don't fully understand that Bitcoin is the safe haven, and you can kind of see this price stagnation. I don't see anything fixing the state of the financial system right now, just because there's been so much printing. Like, you can lower the 10-year interest rate, but to what end, right? It's going to come back later. And you see this in the yen too. There were a number of interventions last year, and what did those interventions accomplish? Not that much, right? It went down and then it went back up to 150 to the dollar. So I just don't see it helping. Even the Department of Government Efficiency, I don't see that helping either. You're cost cutting, but the fact is you're sitting on $36 trillion of debt. Letting it roll over at a lower interest rate doesn't really help much in the long run, because you're missing something. And I think the only way out of it is to switch to Bitcoin, to rebase to Bitcoin, and phase out the old system as gradually as possible. Basically, rebasing is saying you can redeem $1 for 1 Satoshi, and that's it. I mean, you already can do that with gold, right? Like, you just have to make that further jump forward that Bitcoin is digital gold, and I can now peg the dollar to Bitcoin too, right? I think that's ultimately where we're going, but to make it palatable, I believe there have to be shorter, smaller steps taken, like the executive order that says we're creating the reserve, but in a budget neutral manner. Because right now everyone's freaking out about the economy and government spending. It's not very good if they say we're going to go and spend Bitcoin and spend money and buy Bitcoin. And then you create the actual strategic reserve, which means you have to have congressional approval. And we're seeing that. Like Cynthia Lummis presented at the Bitcoin for America event, and you have bipartisan support. So we're seeing that it could come to pass, but it does need congressional approval, which is sort of a litmus test for broader public approval. So if that does happen, then the US will start to buy in serious amounts. And I think once you have a serious amount of Bitcoin, then you can, well, not a Bitcoiner, we would say rebase right away, but as a politician that has to deal with normal people, you can say, okay, now we have a war chest of Bitcoin and we'll allow you to redeem against it at a certain rate. Again, like a lot of people, a lot of politicians and presidents, they don't really know yet. And again, what they don't know is compounded by the fact that they don't know what the implications are. And then you have some that probably clue in and say, okay, this is a big change. But if you're measuring general sentiment on X, I think it's also divided too. Like there are people outspoken that say it's a nothing burger, it doesn't change anything. And then you have people in my camp, or in your camp maybe, that say, yeah, it changes everything, because it really is that starting gun. It's not like we're going to buy 1 million Bitcoin tomorrow, but this opens the door to that. And I think a lot of people kind of expect it's going to happen at the snap of your finger, that it all happens at once, but that's really not the case. You have to have a progress of steps that you go that lead people down that path, and this is that starting gun that begins that whole process. My take is that we got exactly what we wanted and also what was promised, right? So we have two buckets. We have the strategic Bitcoin reserve and then the crypto stockpile. And as you said, it's not to be added to, but to be sold off potentially. There's not much more we can ask for, right? There is a clear separation between Bitcoin and everything else. And also there's now the, the Genius Act, the stablecoin regulations that are coming that will further structure how the market views these different buckets and deals with them. But, we were at the point where we thought we were going to get a crypto reserve. And I actually spent some time thinking about, if Trump wanted a crypto reserve, how could we structure the rules in a way that we don't get a bucket of garbage? And what I came down to was it has to be proof of work, and with additional requirements like, dominance and hashing function, time existing, and a number of other factors. But that was the best I could do to create some structure whereby you wouldn't have Ripple and 1 million meme coins in a crypto reserve. But it's better that we just said it's Bitcoin and then everything else, because that is the holy grail of nation state adoption, that it's Bitcoin only.
Bitcoin isn't just another digital currency, it represents a paradigm shift in finance. In a world where economic instability is driven by fear and government policies, many still fail to grasp Bitcoin's true significance. The idea of a Bitcoin-based financial standard, where governments gradually embrace it as a reserve asset, is no longer just theory. It's becoming a reality. But such a transformation won't happen overnight. Recent policy shifts, including executive actions, indicate that change is already underway. As Bitcoin's value climbs, governments will inevitably seek control. While financial independence from state control is crucial, increased government involvement is inevitable as Bitcoin gains mainstream acceptance. The key challenge? Educating policymakers about Bitcoin's potential, ensuring they understand its impact, and avoid creating unnecessary turmoil. With growing bipartisan support and regulatory groundwork being laid, Bitcoin's volatility is signaling a massive transformation in the financial world. The rise of Bitcoin is unstoppable, and as adoption continues, the real question remains: are you ready for this change? Now, let's dive deeper into more insights from the interview.
Bitcoin adoption is a matter of inevitability. And if Bitcoin became valuable, you can kind of expect that everyone will want it, right? It's not like Bitcoin's going to become a multi-trillion-dollar asset and just, Walker, you and I transact it, to pay for cheeseburgers. The governments are going to want it. Everyone's going to want it. And you have to be okay with the fact that whatever is money is going to be wanted by the government. That's like a tale as old as time, right? Like, if not Bitcoin, it would have been something else. But if it became valuable, the government will want it, because that's what they do. They take money from you and they, redistribute it to various things. So I think you just have to be okay and understand that the separation of money and state is not that you bankrupt the state. I think it's good to reduce the size of the government, because everything's way out of whack right now and the government is far too powerful, right? Like, everything can be weaponized against you as an individual, and I don't think people fully understand that. But separation of money and state is the separation of controlling money and dictating monetary policy from the state. And that is exactly what we're getting with Bitcoin, right? If they create the strategic Bitcoin reserve, and if they launch Bitcoin bonds or Bit bonds, what they're calling them now, that is basically saying, money is money and government is something separate. And it's as powerful and impactful as separation of church and state, I think. So what we're doing, I think, is the right move. We're engaging with the government to help them formulate better Bitcoin strategies, better Bitcoin policies, to understand Bitcoin more fully, so that they can become more like us. They can become more cypherpunk and more interested in monetary history and personal freedom and sovereignty and all those good things. So I think you have to be okay with it. And it's sort of a pipe dream to think we'll have Bitcoin become a major asset in the world and a very valuable multi-trillion-dollar asset class, and the governments are never going to touch it. So I think the areas that people should focus on are on education, because if you look at the BlackRock prospectus, it's actually very flawed in how they determine the validity of a Bitcoin fork. And all of this stuff that is going to come out through legislation from the government to allow them to handle Bitcoin, or how they process Bitcoin and deal with things like forks, that is where we should be fighting on, to make sure they fully understand that it's not the longest chain, it's the heaviest chain, and all of this little nuance that is very important, so that we can prevent another block size war. That is the big value add. And if you want to go even a step further, it's educating them on what exactly it means to live in a hyper-Bitcoinized world. You need stronger protections for property rights. You need stronger protections for the individual. Because if everyone is using Bitcoin as money, and everyone's using an Aqua wallet or a self-custodial wallet where they have their own keys, there is a big danger in a lot of situations that someone can steal your money because they looked at your phone, like a police officer can scroll through your phone and ask, and there are very few protections in place, I think, to prevent this type of abuse, especially at the border, crossing a border, having your devices seized. There's an ocean of opportunity for theft, and especially when money is information like Bitcoin. But definitely, I would say the executive order does make it easier, because there is a clear mandate from President Trump that this needs to get done. Now it comes down to the execution and people lobbying their congresspeople to educate them about Bitcoin. But what it comes down to is its necessity. The US has to adopt Bitcoin in some way. I think the writing is on the wall that the debt levels, the spending is all unsustainable, and the monetary system is in danger. And this is why they're looking to stablecoins to protect dollar hegemony and to maintain dominance at the time when many other countries are de-dollarizing. So I think it's not really about Bitcoin at this point. It's about the future of the US, and if they understand Bitcoin's role in saving the country and saving the economic system. So it is definitely a bipartisan issue, but the positive is we're seeing bipartisan support already out the door. So I'm hopeful that it does all work out. I'm still expecting Omega very soon, and there are direct parallels to the Weimar Mark when it was dying, that you started seeing very wild swings. It would go from single-digit percentages to double, then triple, and then negative when there was government interventions, and then up 100%, and then back down to single digits and thousands. So we're already seeing God candles very regularly, and I see people critiquing and saying, well, where's your God candle? But there have been 8 or 9 of them so far. We're seeing more volatility because Bitcoin is more valuable, so the swings are bigger now. It's just like when Bitcoin was at 1,000, right? When you had $100 swing, it's like, wow, that's crazy. And now it's normal. It's like you don't even notice it. But we're seeing $10,000 swings, and then eventually it goes to $100,000 swings. So the Omega thesis is still very valid, and I think it is still coming. And what worries me, or I don't know if worry is the right word, but what concerns me is we're not getting that slow and steady rise, which means the rise is going to be far more violent, simply because we're not going up gradually, right? And if it's not gradually, then it's sudden. And I don't think we're going to go to 58K, but as you said, anything can happen in Bitcoin.
Bitcoin's resurgence is making waves, showing strong signs of recovery from recent declines and fueling optimism among investors. After dropping over 29% from its peak of $19,000, Bitcoin has rebounded by 7%, showcasing its resilience even amid macroeconomic uncertainty. Institutional investors remain confident, as demonstrated by $632 million in net inflows to US Bitcoin ETFs. Despite concerns over geopolitical tensions and potential recessions, expert opinions on Bitcoin's future remain divided. Some foresee continued bullish momentum, while others warn of potential downturns. Samson Mow, however, sees Bitcoin's long-term success as inevitable. As its value rises, government intervention is bound to increase. This is a natural response whenever something becomes immensely valuable, authorities want a stake in it. Mow emphasizes the need for financial separation between money and the state, advocating for a Bitcoin-based system that minimizes government control over monetary policy. He argues that ongoing global financial instability, driven by inflation and excessive government spending, will eventually push major economies, particularly the US, toward Bitcoin as a safeguard. As Bitcoin's role in global finance expands, the significance of ETFs and institutional involvement cannot be overlooked. Mow stresses that educating lawmakers about Bitcoin's true potential is critical to ensuring its smooth integration into the global economy. While Bitcoin's price swings may seem unpredictable, they are merely part of its growth process. According to Mow, the future of finance has already arrived. Bitcoin is set to be the foundation of a new financial era. As we wrap up, what do you think? Will Bitcoin's volatility stabilize over time, or is this just part of its evolution? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and spread the word. Thanks for watching.